Today is a day, great day for us to hear desperate dispatches from Abuja, Nigeria, where the leader of IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, is being arraigned in court for a hearing for a trial, and where Buhari regime has added another charge of terrorism. Remember the Nigerian situation, and Buhari's background is the chief rendating officer in the whole world. Remember, Buhari rendated 6 Amazonians from Nigeria back to Port Bia to kill them. They were killed. We don't know where they are. Nobody has ever known where they are. Remember, Buhari tried to rendate Umar Diko from a British installation, surely, in Stansted Airport, where Umar Diko was found in a coffin, purported to be a dead body, discovered by MI5 and the Metropolitan Police. That was General Buhari. General Buhari has not changed his colors. General Buhari remains the same Buhari. General Buhari operates outside every norm of law on the planet Earth. It is up to the people of Africa. And at this time, we don't talk as Nigerians, we talk as Africans. When something happens to any African, anywhere on planet Earth, we stand with that African. When something wrong goes wrong on the continent of Africa, we stand by that country and condemn actions of killings, torture, maiming, corruption. We have never been away. We are not part of rogue regime change. We are not part of regimes that are rogue regimes. We are different from our operations. Our operations as a Pan-African speaking station does not involve itself in operations that are clandestine. Our operations are above board. If you can hear me, most of the night, people in Nigeria and in Biafra, you hear me almost every Monday in the village square on your television. Millions, over 60 to 70 millions of you hear me every day. And I condemn actions in Africa across without any remorse. I have no regrets for standing for the people of Africa, the oppressed, those who yearn freedom, those who want freedom. You cannot talk of African unity when some parts of Africa are injured, are bleeding. You cannot talk about a country called Nigeria with a population of 200 million people, which could be serving Africa as an example when it is sinking in Atlantic Ocean. The rate of poverty in Nigeria today, a country over 60 years without electricity, a country where people sleep over water. The BBC documentary recently showed that people sleep on water. A country that has no value for Africa at all. We thought a big population, people in Kenya and Uganda and East Africa would sell their commodities. We have ended up ashamed. We have been ashamed by the leadership of General Buhari. And we have no regrets of telling the world that indeed General Buhari has mishandled the economy of that country, has mishandled the security of that country, has mishandled, killed the value of a presidency. We have no regrets. We have no regrets of telling the world that Boko Haram kills people, maims people, that Nigeria has become a state of kidnappers, a state where people, vigilante groups, bandits, commonly known, come and take people on ransom and hide them, demand money. We have not been shy, and neither shall we be shy and be intimidated. Mr. Buhari, you shall be told the truth, because some of us will beat us by very few years. But we have also been in the same army that you have trained in those institutions of Sandhurst and other places. Mr. Buhari, time has come for you to change Africa. But if you want to change Africa by killing people, it doesn't help you. If you want to change Africa by ignoring Boko Haram, did you form Boko Haram, Mr. Buhari? Are you the owner of Boko Haram? It looks like you promised Nigerians that I will finish Boko Haram in 100 days. Where are your promises? Boko Haram in Maiduguri, north in Nigeria, eats its people, kills its people, has destroyed that country. A country without direction, yea. A country without direction, the center cannot hold. As Chinawa Achebe said, that perhaps we have been away for too long. Obierika was telling Okonkwo that perhaps we have been away for too long. The Umofia clan has collapsed. A white man, but this time is a black man. Okonkwo was not aware that things had changed. Many Africans are not aware that things have changed in Nigeria. That the leader whom they elected has become a killer of the same people who elected him. Has become a destroyer of the same state that is supposed to safeguard. Has allowed ethnic profiling to take place in Nigeria. He has allowed the Fulani to kill the Igbo. And we shall not keep quiet, ye Buhari. Watch this face. I'm not bothered. Ye, when we meet in the corridors of God, look at us and let God look at both of us. That one day a man rose from East Africa and told you the truth. Buhari, there comes a time when a continent is bigger than yourself. You have let us down. You have let us down. The spirit of Baba Tafawa Balewa is gone. The spirit of Sankara is gone. The spirit of Patrice Lumumba is gone. The spirit of Kwame Nkrumah is gone. Sekou Touré is gone. Benabeira is gone. The spirit of Nyerere is gone. That recognized Biafra. The spirit of Myron, late President Obote, who recognized Biafra without shame. I follow the blood that recognizes Biafra. The spirit of Kaunda, who fought very hard to bring Biafra to life, is gone. You have killed us. You have killed the nation. You have destroyed the spirit of Emperor Haile Selassie. You have Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting from the Political Command Center. I hope you are now seeing me properly. broadcasting from the Political Command Center in Africa. This is Punchline Africa TV, the television for Pan-Africanism, the television that talks about Pan-Africanism. However tired we are, we shall continue to talk about our Africa. What ails Africa? What kills Africa? What makes Africa be a sick child? Yet we have a lot of mineral resources. What makes Africa look like a laughing stock? Yet we are capable of being the best people on planet Earth. Is there anything that we can do? We don't have guns to fight leaders. We don't have any resources to give our poor countries that have been made poor, yet they are very rich. Tonight, on this show, facing the political fire, we have none other than Professor PLO Lumumba. Professor PLO Lumumba as a guest. We are waiting for Professor David Hoile. Professor David Hoile comes from Zimbabwe, but he lives in London. He's a professor of international relations and political science. He's a member of the Chatham House and other institutions that actually do research on the continent of Africa. He has been very prominent on ICC cases together with me. We have stood against ICC in Europe, calling the ICC the Montego Bay of Europe. Professor PLO Lumumba is a professor of constitutional law and also a political scientist and a person who is a motivational speaker across the continent of Africa. Many of you in Biafra and across the continent of Africa, he has been telling us, and all the things that he has been telling us have come to pass. Also on the panel, I have the guest, Daniel Wesonga. Is our in-house investigative journalist who pieces up and puts up all the work on Nigeria, on Biafra, on Libya, on Ethiopia, on Central African Republic, and in many other countries that are under the spell of destruction. Today is a great day for me. And across in Ireland, we shall have Mr. Ikem. Mr. Ikem is coming from Ireland in the great Europe. He is a member of the IPOB. He will be speaking to us. And we shall have several other people. Those who want to join us, the number is very clear on our flyer to ask Professor the questions that you want. But the subject is, the topic is, the show is facing political fire. It is fire. Don't waste much time. I will fire the questions. And we start. When the fire burns you, you cool down. But I don't think I can manage Professor PLO Lumumba, who himself is online right from the capital city of Kenya, Nairobi. Good evening, Professor.
David, good evening. Thank you very much, David, for bringing on the table a subject that is evergreen. I'm happy to join and to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Professor. Daniel Wesonga, across in the CBD of Nairobi. Can you and the people of Africa, people from Zimbabwe, from Libya, from Asmara, Eritrea, are waiting to see you. Greet the people of Africa and the people of Kenya.
Yes, very good evening, Dr. Matsanga David, and good evening to Professor PLO Lumumba, our African brothers who are watching us here in Kenya, Africa at large. And indeed, it is a very, very great topic to discuss about Nigeria, because we have been seeing a lot of negative stuff coming from Nigeria, and especially matters surrounding the indigenous people of Biafra and Nigeria at large. Therefore, it is my pleasure to be on the conversation this evening.
Thank you very much, viewers across Ireland. We shall have Mr. Ikem from Nigeria, who is up waiting, who will join us on the way. The topic of today is very simple. And it does not only relate to Nigeria. I want to give you a background, a simple background in 2 minutes. The country of Nigeria has a population of 220 million people. It houses a federal state of federal systems, among one of the systems of devolution. Loses states governed by foreign policy, defense policy, and the internal affairs policy. The rest of the things are done by states. There are several states that formed Nigeria in 1914 under the British colonial master. Today, as we stand, Nigeria's population is estimated to be 220 million people or more. Nigeria is the second largest producer of oil around the world, or the biggest producer of oil in Africa. But this nation has a history of bad things that have happened to it. From its inception, after independence, the first leader was assassinated, killed, a coup came, and others followed. A war, 1966, broke out between Yakubu Gowon and the Biafran leader. That war took a lot of lives. Me, I am interested in Nigeria. They better know that it was Uganda that made it possible for Nigeria to have its independence, for Nigeria to have its relative, what you call, peace between Biafra and the main Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, the war left several wounds. So many things were not completed. The hatred of the Fulani against the Igbo has grown in the years as we speak today. General Buhari is the leader of this great country called Nigeria. But General Buhari, coming to 9 years in power, has not demonstrated the type of leadership that is needed for a big nation like Nigeria to give other African states hope. He has instead helped to disintegrate the state of Nigeria. Is Nigeria, therefore, sinking? That is the topic today. Is Nigeria sinking? People sleep on water, no electricity. Generators have become the norm of the day in a modern Africa, where electricity is so cheap. Petrol station queues are as long as 10 miles for a country that produces crude oil. Professor PLO Lumumba, I don't want to eat many words. I want you to give us what you think, why this nation is sinking, and compare not only related to Nigeria, other states in Africa seem to be sinking. There are so many of them as you can take it from. Professor PLO Lumumba, is Nigeria sinking?
Thank you very much. Let me preface my contribution by saying that Nigeria is not sinking. Nigeria is going through trials and tribulations. And if you permit me, I will start from the state of what I describe as the post-colonial African state. The post-colonial African state is artificial. And those of you who are students of history will have read the celebrated book by a Nigerian, Adekeye Adebajo, The Curse of Berlin, Africa After the Cold War. And Adekeye, with whom I agree, demonstrates to the reader that what happened in Berlin in 1884 and 1885, which was an arbitrary partition of Africa and creation of states, which boundaries we inherited and which boundaries we have remained faithful to, was a curse. If you look at the state of Nigeria, for example, as we know it, Lord Lugard is the one who, through initiation from his country, the United Kingdom, ensured that on the eve of regaining independence, the North, which was administered separately, was then joined with the South. And this was deliberately designed to ensure that the newly independent state would not succeed. And if you listen to some of the founding fathers of Nigeria, they themselves were very skeptical about the possible success of the new entity. You only have to listen to Nnamdi Azikiwe, you have to listen to Obafemi Awolowo, you have to listen to Ahmadu Bello, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and Dim Chukwuemeka Odumegwu. They recognized that this was an artificial entity. And Chinua Achebe, in his book written in 1983, The Trouble with Nigeria, says, among other things, that Nigeria, like most African countries, is an artificial country. And the name Nigeria refers to a geographical space which was artificially created. And he goes further to say that there is no Nigerian in the same way as there is a Scotsman or a Welshman or a Swedish or a Danish. And that is not only unique to Nigeria. It is unique, it is common, as we know, in Sudan. Sudan was also administered in the same way. And in 1956, the British and the Egyptians who were administering at that time combined the two countries that they may not succeed. The same is true in Cameroon. An entity that was being administered by the French was combined with one that was being administered by the British, who had taken over from the Germans. We saw that in Nyasaland, where you had Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and what is today Malawi. You saw that with Eritrea. You saw that with the Arab Democratic Republic of Sahrawi. So that without belaboring the point and therefore confusing the issue, African countries are going through a crisis or crises, which is not unique to Nigeria. Nigeria stands out because since she regained independence, she has gone through a very difficult period, in the same way as the country that I should have mentioned a little earlier, the Democratic Republic of Congo, has also gone through that path. That Nigeria started, and of course, you know what happened when there were three regions. You know the coup d'etat in 1967, you know the Aburi Accord, you know the Civil War, and you know the kind of tension that have existed. And these are trials and tribulations. If you permit me, if you look at the history of the United States of America, which we are fond of citing, in 1863, the United States of America went through a civil war. You remember the Proclamation of Independence. And as recently as 1963, through the Civil Rights Movement. I therefore want us to be very measured in passing a verdict on the state of African countries. The oldest African country since we regained independence was Ghana. That is just 65 years ago. Countries have gone through many problems. Look at the countries of the former Soviet Union. During our own lifetime, we saw the former Soviet Union crumbling. We saw Yugoslavia crumbling. We saw Serbia crumbling. We saw India crumbling to create Pakistan, and Pakistan crumbling to create Bangladesh. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to be very measured. Let us not be quick to pass judgment. What you are called crumbling must be defined for what they are. These are trials and tribulations, and it is incumbent upon Nigerians and upon Africans to face what Kwame Nkrumah said in 1963, to ensure that we de-emphasize these boundaries and begin to work towards greater integration while celebrating diversity. In order to direct my audience to the subject at hand, Nigeria is not crumbling. Nigeria is grappling with issues of discontentment of people who believe, and rightly so, that they are not being served well by the center government. And you remember the words of John Garang Di Mabior to the Khartoum government. We do not want to separate Sudan, but the center must make unity attractive. I hear the people in Nigeria, in Biafra, the people in Oduduwa, the people in Delta Republic telling the Abuja government, make the center attractive, make us feel that we are citizens of Nigeria. And that is exactly the same thing that was said in Aburi in Accra during the meeting that involved Chukwuemeka, Odumegwu and Gawan. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the tone that I'm suggesting we set, because crumbling is too deep, too dangerous a word to describe.
Professor PLO, I think I hand over the microphone to, I want to hand over the microphone to Daniel Wesonga. And Daniel Wesonga, can you now moderate? Because Professor PLO has trickled me. Professor PLO has raised the points that I want to challenge on this discussion. The topic, Nigeria is sinking. It is sinking. And I want to put my points very clear, Prof. There is no problem. I agree with you when you say it is suffering from the colonial hangover that most African countries suffer. But surely, after 60 years, you tell me a country like Nigeria does not have electricity. If you go to any place in London on the aircraft, in Dubai, Nigerians are buying generators. A country that produces oil, crude oil, goes to manufacture that oil and it has no petrol. They are queues in Lagos, Abuja, Onitsha, Enugu, all the Ibadan, all these cities, they are queues of petrol, lack of petrol. You can't tell me that country is not sinking. It is sinking. If you look at the amount of banditry, the kidnapping, the slaughter of innocent people from Maiduguri in the north by Boko Haram, the kidnapping of girls, abduction of girls. Each state in Nigeria is facing a sinking situation. Professor, I put it to you and I submit. That cannot be made that it is going through a transition. Going through a transition, which transition? Going through a transition when the Fulani are killing the Igbo, is it not sinking? Going through a transition when the Igbo cannot go out and eat, cannot fly, cannot sit, cannot go in their capital, Abuja. They are told to go home. Is it not sinking? I am a very good Pan-Africanist. I want a unity of Africa. But the Africa that is bleeding, one Africa that is bleeding, where one nation is bleeding, I can't keep quiet. And I've never kept quiet about Nigeria. For the last 6 years, I have been a very, 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 very serious advocate against Buhari's regime. A country that kidnaps people, renders people, steals people, puts people in coffins. General Buhari put Muhammad Omar Diko in a coffin in Stansted. I was in London. I was shocked for a whole general to steal a man from London. Professor, is that colonial problem? Let's go slowly. I'll give you time, and I have handed the microphone to Esonga because I want to come in here. We better exchange and show the Africa we want. Africa holds elections. The Nigerian elections were held under the auspices that they will win Boko Haram. General Buhari promised us 9 years ago that within 100 days, Boko Haram will be the thing of the past. Ye, my Lord, oh my Lord, today, not even a single Boko Haram can be displayed at the UN General Headquarters. We haven't seen any displayed at the UN that have captured them and have captured the leader. At least for us, with Al-Shabaab, we capture and display them. And I say we have captured these Al-Shabaab leaders. General Buhari let us down. The Buhari regime, therefore, is not a regime that I can think about. It's not a regime that I can say I call a government. A government that deals with a chief justice and a Professor PLO, you are yourself a lawmaker, a constitutional law lawyer. The Chief Justice of Nigeria has no papers. He told the world that termites, very big termites, I don't know Nigerians watching this might tell me, how big are these termites in Nigeria that can eat certificates of the Chief Justice? He came on TV and told the world that his certificates have been eaten. So he doesn't have any certificate to put to the Senate for approval. That is the Chief Justice that Mr. Buhari, because he's a Fulani, he selected him. He uses Sharia law. Which law in Nigeria is acceptable? Do we go for Sharia law, English law, American law? Which one? We don't know. The killing of Christians of the South is what pains me. The slaughter of the small children, the rape, the defilement of women is what pains me. Nigeria is undergoing, in the eastern part of Nigeria, the army has come down to kill people, documented by human rights and other citizens. If I show you the videos of the killings in Nigeria, Professor, you wouldn't say Nigeria is smiling. Nigeria is lawless state, an African state that has ashamed us. Nigeria, like Ethiopia, like Central African Republic, like a Democratic Republic of Congo, have ashamed us Africans. And we cannot blame and blame and blame the 1884 Berlin. Professor, you are today in the court in Kenya. Your students were quoting you on this Berlin theory. The viewers would like to see the Berlin fury. How has it affected Africa today? 60 years of independence. Daniel, I submit.
Thank you, yes, David. Sorry, David. Daniel, come on in.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga. And of course, I would say that in my opinion, I believe whatever Professor PLO Lumumba has said could be true, because we always have a colonial angle to these problems that we are having as an African continent. Remember, they're the same people who came on board and through the Berlin Declaration by Ottoman Bismarck declared the boundaries, the tribal or maybe the national boundaries that we have today, putting Africans into very much segregated and fragmented boundaries to ensure that we have ethnicity. And through this ethnicity, they knew that even long after colonialism, we will not have to forge a united path to be able to talk about progress and prosperity of our people. But sticking to that and also looking at it from the Nigerian perspective will only be akin to looking at only one side of the coin. Remember, we have countries which have been able to overcome these colonial demarcations and have been able to forge a very, very united front. Look, for example, a country like Ghana, which is like a twin sister to Nigeria. Ghana has never had these kind of big...
Wesonga, you are a moderator. You just put the question to PLO. I left the microphone to you today because I want to struggle with PLO until I convince him to come on my side.
All right, Dr. Matsanga. So let me retract back and come back as a moderator. So maybe yes. I'll just like to ask Professor PLO, why is it that if you say that it is a colonial problem, why is it that only Nigeria and not maybe its neighbor Ghana, who they got independence almost during the same time, is having this problem between the Fulani, the north and the south? And he went ahead and talked about the issue of South Sudan, where John Garang said that the center must be seen as to be attracting the rest and not maybe repelling it. And of course, we know how it ended up in South Sudan. A two-state solution was actually whatever surfaced in this particular manner. So why not give the people of Biafra a separate, why not have the same two-state solution to the people of Nigeria? Today in the morning with Dr. Matsanga, we were looking at whatever is happening in Somalia. Maybe if you will come on board and expound, maybe, is it possible for Nigeria to have a two-state solution, or should we continue with the path that maybe he was suggesting, that they should look forward to uniting and coming back together as a nation without necessarily falling apart?
Professor.
You know, thank you very much. In fact, David thinks we are saying different things. From where I sit, we are saying exactly the same thing, but saying it differently. And this is how it is. The reality is that we inherited states, not nation states, states that were designed to fail. They were designed to fail. That is why the colonizer put together very suddenly, with no history of administration, put together people who are being administered. In the case of Nigeria, we know how the North was being administered. We know how the South was being administered. And all these issues are issues which have continued to bedevil not only Nigeria, but in this case, let me focus on Nigeria for a few minutes. They have continued to bedevil Nigeria. And I want you to listen to some of the statements that were being made, as I said a little earlier, by people like Ahmadu Bello. Bello believed that the North ought to be administered separately. And when the Nigeria at that time was in three regions, the northern part of it, the western part of it, and the eastern part of it, as I said earlier, people like Obafemi Awolowo believed that what is now described as the Oduduwa Republic should be administered separately, as indeed did people like Chukwuemeka Odumegu a little earlier, and people like Abubakar Tafawa Balewa and Ahmadu Bello, whom I've talked about. So that after the coup d'etat in 1967, which when Chukwuma Kaduna Nziogu took over power, and so soon after that Agui Ronzi took over power, it was seen as an attempt by the Igbo people to seize political power. And that, of course, then degenerated in the manner that we know. And when the leaders met in Aburi, in Ghana, the people are very clear. At least when I read Ojukwu was very clear. He said, what we want is to have a federal government. And the federal government, like all federal governments, there is not one model, but in our case, we want the Lagos government, the Lagos was then the capital, not Abuja, to be involved in matters of foreign policy, to be involved in matters of monetary policy, to be involved in the military, but all other things will be administered so that the territory known as Biafra would administer certain things and other parts of Nigeria. And Ojukwu actually left Aburi believing that they had agreed with Gowon. Unknown to him, Gowon took a totally different path, and we now know the history. You remember these famous words of Dim Chukwuemeka Odumeku Ojukwu. He said, by Aburi we stand, and remember the retort by Gowon, and by Aburi you shall fall. So we blame Berlin for planting the seed. We blame ourselves, meaning the post-independence leaders, for not recognizing that in order to defeat the colonialists, there had to be accommodation. So it is this lack of accommodation that creates resentment. And that resentment is what we have seen in the Biafra, is that resentment that we see in the Oduduwa, and that resentment is what we see in the Delta region. That resentment is what we see in the kind of conflicts that we see that you have tabulated, David, the killings in Zamfara, the killings in Maiduguri, and all other places. And these trials and tribulations must be addressed. It is the duty of the administration in power to ensure that these issues are addressed, because people are entitled to proper treatment, they are entitled to peace and security, they are entitled to involvement in government, and Nigeria is of concern because Nigeria is such an important country, not only in West Africa, but in the entire region, with a population of over 200 million. In other words, the Nigerian population is larger than all West African countries combined. That tells you why peace and security is very critical in Nigeria. And we have said, at least I've said not once, not twice, many times, that Nigeria must show leadership, and that requires that they must respect the rule of law and respect and treat all her citizens in a uniform manner. As I conclude, I want to reiterate that the Nigerian problem is not the only problem in Africa. We know, for example, even the Ghana that you are talking about. Remember, Ghana under Nkrumah is one of the very first countries to suffer coup d'etat in 1966. And after that, there was a series of coup d'etats. After the Kotoka coup, we know there were coups by Chempong, we know there were coups by many others, and leading up to ultimately the return to civilian rule with Hila Liman, the coups of Jerry Rawling, we know what happened. We also know that there are agitation by the Volta people. We know what has happened in Liberia with the Civil War, the Sierra Leone. We know what is happening in Southern Cameroon with Ambazonia. All these tells you that the problem has a root, and that root is what I refer to as the curse of Berlin. And what I want to hear from a debate such as this, where I think we agreed, is to ask ourselves, what then can we do in the face of these problems to ensure that these issues are solved? Because you cannot dismiss what is being said by the Biafra people. If you dismiss it, you are missing the point. You've got to listen and ask, why is it that a people who are so endowed, a people who are so enterprising are raising these issues? Why is it that people in the Dudua Republic are raising these issues? Why is it that people are raising these things in the Delta region? And if I was asked, you need an all Nigerian people's forum, at which these things are going to be brought on the table, and Nigeria can be renegotiated. And this happened, as we know, in South Sudan, but it hasn't solved the problem. We know there is still the Blue Nile. We know there is the Abyei problem. We know that there is the Darfur problem. In Ethiopia, we know that there is the Tigray problem. There is the Oromo problem. There is the Ogaden problem, the Somali problem. You know that there is Somaliland. You know there is Jubaland. There is Puntland. In Mozambique, you know there is a problem in the north. In South Africa, you know that the Western Cape also wants to secede. So if you look at Africa, you discover that there is a problem. Even in Namibia, you know that there is the Caprivi Strip. The people of Caprivi at one time wanted their own independence. So Africa is facing many dangerous problems, and the Nigerian issue and problem is emblematic of it. The question is, knowing as I do that we are reading from the same page, what should we do? What clear message should we send to this administration, not with the arrogance that inflames their anger, but with the firmness that opens their eyes and removes the scale so that they may see, and removes the wax so that they may hear? This is what I put on the table.
Thank you very much.
You so
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. And of course, you've been able to put across your point quite clearly on the question of Nigeria, and also in regards to why maybe that the same is not happening in Ghana. But Dr. Matsanga David, I really want to maybe get your opinion on this. Nigerian people, and especially the people of Biafra, have been promised a referendum by the successive regimes of Nigeria. And of course, the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari was the last one to be maybe expected to give the people of Biafra a referendum. Why are they not giving these people an opportunity to be able to determine their sovereignty? Why has it become so difficult even for President Muhammadu Buhari to incorporate sufficiently the people of Biafra into government? Because the kind of leadership we have today is a leadership where they're discriminated against in favor of the Fulani people. Today in Nigeria, there is no meritocracy. And I believe that is the reason why the insurgency against the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari has grown twofold at this particular moment. What do you think will be the solution to this particular problem? Will we have peace in Nigeria if the people of Biafra are included in government, or the ultimate solution has to go all the way to the ballot in form of a referendum?
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you very much, Professor PLO Lumumba. Professor, you have now corrected your position, and now we can speak on the wavelength, which is similar. I still want to
I've not corrected my position. That was my original position. It's only that you apprehend me.
I am told that in court today, there was a difference between amendment and altering. So you as a professor of law, and an amendment and an alteration, and one of the lawyers came up to say, it is the same. They mean the same. Alteration and amendment almost mean the same. So for me, I thought you were going on this angle. That's why I left my guard to Daniel to come in. But let me now come in to propose. The Biafrans have been saying, without ignoring the past, we have had the past. The colonial master arranged us in a way that the North always fights the South. The East, South fights the West. That was the way of divide and rule tactics of the colonial master. Let's all agree on that. Then we move on. When we have agreed on that, let's move on now. 60 years as Africans, haven't we found a modus operandi of rearranging ourselves? Either we reaffirm the original borders, or we say enough is enough. We were put in a place which we don't want. The Biafrans have been asking for a referendum. They want a referendum. No shortcut. No shortcut. Because Europe itself has done a referendum. Britain itself has done a referendum. Britain said, do you want to stay in the EU or you want to pull out of EU? We voted overwhelmingly against leaving the European Union. My vote went for stay in the European Union. We lost by a small margin in the United Kingdom. Today in Africa, the British and the other colonial masters, like the French, are not telling us to stay away, to keep, to say, keep together. When we do a national unity, they bring in things that divide us. They come and pull one African against another one. The question of Libya today, if you go to Libya today, you can see what I'm talking about today. Libya was once a paradise of Africa. Gaddafi created Libya and put up Libya as a paradise. Look at the Libya today we have. The French came and hit Libya with bombs, divided Libya into two parts. The Libya that gives them the oil and the Libya that does not give them the oil. They are now in Benghazi. The Turks came and took Tripoli. The French took Benghazi. Today, as we speak today, the Sahel region is full of obstacles created because of Libya disappearing from the surface. Muammar Gaddafi had controlled the terrorists that were killing us in the Sahel region. As we speak today, look at the Sahel region. All the countries in the Sahel region, there are terrorists bombing them while they are eating food in the restaurants. That terrorism has come a great danger to the states in the Sahel region, Central Africa, to East Africa, in the Horn of Africa, where we are. Okay, when the Biafrans ask for a referendum, a good president should have put a timetable for the Biafrans to have a referendum. Why has Buhari feared to put a referendum? You can put a referendum and stagger the time of departure if this is the worry. Why are they asking for a referendum? Professor, they're asking for a referendum because they have no equal rights in Nigeria. They don't have equal rights in a state called Nigeria. They are criminalized in their own state. When they go in the north, they are told to go back home. So if you are in a state like Kenya, and you are in the north in Moyale, you are told to go back home in Nairobi. Are you a Kenyan? That's the question for Professor for me. Are you a Kenyan? No. When you come back, you will answer for me. These are some of the challenges that have put the Biafrans. The way the army has come to kill them, the way the army is dismembering them, the way the army is torturing their women, their children, their men, the elderly, is what has made things very difficult. An army that was created to fight terrorism, the Boko Haram, the bandits, the kidnappers, has turned on fighting the people of Biafra and the southeastern Nigeria. It is not only the Biafrans who are making noise. The Yoruba want their way out. So, as you rightly put, Prof, time has come for us as African and African Union to say what is the problem That's why I brought this topic to trigger people's minds. Is Nigeria sinking in the Atlantic Ocean? I still maintain, yes, it is sinking very badly. Professor, as I finish, you will see there's a BBC program which aired just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where a Nigerian from Southeast went back home to film houses over water. Houses, you enter your house with a canoe. The rate of poverty, the amount of poverty in a delta region which produces oil, and in the southeastern, one gentleman today when I was broadcasting the Nnamdi Kanu's issue from Abuja in the court live, one of the gentlemen on the camera told me, Dr. Matanga, look, Abuja is very clean, but in our place, we look like we're in old Stone Age. They don't think like they're in Nigeria at all. So that's these problems, you can call them that they were colonial. Yes, 60 years, surely. 6 decades. We have been on the same move, on the same promises. We have been telling people lies that we are going to change. Nigeria cannot change anymore. The only way left is for African Union to call a summit to ask the president of Nigeria to put out a referendum. The rearrangement of Nigeria, as you said, General Babangida has already said Nigeria needs rearrangement. We are rearranging Somalia today, are we not? You saw in the House of Commons, PLO, for your information, yesterday in the House of Commons, for the first time a debate occurred in the House of Commons, in Her Majesty's House, where Somaliland, Puntland, is seeking to have a state of its own. Why? Somalia, Puntland is fed up with the Somalia, the main Somalia, where terrorism has become the hobby of the day. Biafrans are also fed up, where Fulani herdsmen come with their daggers south and kill them, eat their women, slaughter them, burn them, torch their houses. No, the time has come for the president either to put the house in order or Africa calls him in order. And that is my submission, that the time has come for the African Union to come in and call a conference on Nigeria, because Nigeria has got a lot of advantages. Economic advantages, professors, I finish, include a lot of, they can buy our goods that we produce in Kenya. They can buy our goods in Kenya. 200 million people. They don't need to go to Dubai. They need to buy Kenyan goods. But because there is insecurity, the money power has gone down. The production rate has gone down. The purchasing power is not there. Nobody can buy our goods. It's a market that has been destroyed. Africa has lost. We should be ashamed of ourselves that the tragedy of Africa, as Chinawa Achebe said, stems from our own ego. The leadership of Africa, therefore, has shown no remorse. They are not remorseful of the actions that they have put on the people. The human rights abuses that accompany the leadership of General Buhari cannot be underestimated. The rendition of people, the abduction of people, the singing of Boko Haram. Is he part of the Boko Haram then? That's my question. That's my submission.
David, I want to begin my answer to you by making reference to a statement made by Kwame Nkrumah in the 1960s. And this is what Diosagifo said. The political situation in Africa today is heartening and at the same time disturbing. It is heartening to see so many new flags hoisted in the place of the old. It is disturbing to see so many countries of varying sizes and at different levels of development weak and in some cases almost helpless. If this terrible state of fragmentation is allowed to continue, it may be disastrous for us all. And I believe that that statement spoken nearly 50 years ago is as legitimate today as when it was stated. And the point that I want to make, David, is this. The African Union, which you and me know is a toothless bulldog, is incapable of convening a meeting at which these serious issues can be discussed. Africa is in crisis. And as I said a little earlier, Nigeria as a nation is only emblematic of that problem. Nigeria is home to some of the most educated people in the world, some of the most industrious people in the world. Nigeria could lead in the mining sector. Nigeria could lead in agriculture. Nigeria could lead in textile. Nigeria could lead in the leather industry. Nigeria could lead in petroleum. Nigeria could lead in fertilizer. Nigeria could lead in the gas industry. She's not providing that leadership. And that is why we are saying the same thing, that the time has come for we Africans, if the politicians cannot do it, then there is need for a movement of Africans in the streets, as we see it in countries such as Sudan, in an organized manner to call upon those in political leadership and to re-energize the African Union, to re-energize these bodies that exist, that we may discuss the existing crises. What I see in Mali, for example, in resistance to the decision by ECOWAS to sanction the Malian regime, is indicative of the anger which now resides in many Africans. The coup d'etat that you've seen in Guinea-Conakry, the activities that you see in Chad, all these are symptomatic of a larger problem. And I can't agree with you more that the time is now, that we recognize that there is a crisis, that crisis is not only limited to Nigeria in the manner that we have outlined and in the manner that we are aware of, that crisis is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. You may want to know, for example, that in the eastern part of Congo, there are more than 120 militias, 120. And if you go to Central African Republic and the entire Sahelian region, you've already talked about Somalia, Puntland, and Somaliland, and Somalia, and of course, Jubaland, and all these. So the question is, knowing as we do and recognizing as we have, how do we put what we are saying into motion? You are aware, and I shared this with you, I did write to all the 54 African heads of states and governments saying that there is need to convene an urgent meeting in Addis Ababa to discuss the state of Africa, because Africa is not going to realize economic growth or social cohesion if we don't deal with the legitimate issues that are being raised by various peoples. In Nigeria, we know those issues are being raised by the Igbo people, they are being raised by the Oduduwa people, they are being raised by the Ijoma people, they are being raised by the Ijo, they are being raised by the Ibibio. We know they are being raised in Cameroon, we know they are being raised in different parts of Africa, and these issues ought to be put on the table. And indeed, in doing that, we will not be different. You and me, after 1989, have seen how the different peoples in the former Soviet Union had to part their ways in order to forge a new alliance. Czech Republic and Slovakia, Yugoslavia, which I mentioned a little earlier. All these issues are issues which are on the table. And I think we have overanalyzed the problem. I would now want to hear, how are we going to resolve these problems which are causing pain and death and disruption and are causing people to run away from their homes, and people are being humiliated, people are being denied their lives and their livelihoods? How can we then resolve these problems?
Wesonga, the
Yes,
professor. Yeah, can I answer the professor?
All right, go ahead, Dr. Matsanga.
Then you can come in and do the summary. We want to move to a substantive topic. Professor, I do agree with you. The African Union is sitting in 1 week's time on the 30th and the 31st, 3 days in Addis Ababa. The chairman of African Union, Dr. Mohamed Faki, has called it a summit and is pleading with African heads of state that now COVID regulations have been relaxed. They better come to Addis Ababa physically, enjoy Ethiopian weather, Ethiopian climate and food. I don't think many African heads of state will try to go to a conference where rebels are only 20 kilometers away of Oromo near the capital. And I would advise His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, my friend, and my President of the Republic of Uganda, Museveni, please, for the first time, boycott this summit and work on Zoom. Let's meet these people on Zoom. Because why should African Union heads of state fly to Addis Ababa, including Buhari, to go and show the good big clothes, the new ones that they have bought, and come back when Africa is bleeding? How do we resolve this problem? I saw PLO's letter to African Union. It was very clear. The EU seemed to have been rented, and this is the time for us as Africans, as Nigeria sinks, as we allow Nigeria to sink, which is sinking. I will not agree with any other adjective to describe Nigeria. Nigeria is sinking to Atlantic Ocean. It will be submerged by water, in water, because everything is broken down. Everything from everywhere, and if everything is broken down, Nigeria is no more. The story of Chinua Achebe in the book, page 53, where Obierika told Okonkwo that perhaps Professor PLO has been away for too long. That a white man has put a knife on the things that held us together. Our Umofia clan has collapsed. There is a bicycle that drinks milk that is ridden in the villages down in Umofia. Those in Nigeria who would like to read, I know Professor is one of the few people who likes reading literature, and you have stocked quite a number of them at your home, can borrow that book and see. I am also advising Professor that perhaps we have been too late. Perhaps the Africans have been sold already. The African Union seems to have been sold. I will bring attention to one African Union today. If there is anything that we want to talk about, Professor, it is where we went wrong. Professor, where we went wrong is very clear. we went wrong in allowing our football to be sponsored by Total Oil.
Sad.
Very sad.
Very sad.
In fact, for me, viewers across the world, we have just dropped our network went down, but we are back. The network for broadcasting, not us. It went down, and I am sure Buhari is interfering. But I have other methods of making sure that he cannot manage my stance. It is very sad for Africa and Africans, surely, to be sponsored to play football. In Cameroon, in a situation where the president of Cameroon does not live in Cameroon, but flies in to see and open up the football. It is sad for Africa. And because I'm bringing in the question of African Union, where did we go wrong? If Nkrumah woke up, if Baba Tafawa Balewa woke up, if Nyerere, Obote, Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya woke up, and so Haile Selassie, Gabriel Nasser, Benabera, Sekuture, Amir Kabura, Patrice Lumumba, oh my God, Mandela, oh my God, Samora Machel, all these Agustino Neto. If these gallant sons of Africa woke up today and saw what is happening to the African Union, if Musazi, the first Ugandan nationalist who formed the Uganda People's Congress and organized Uganda to be a united state, if he woke up today, we have a problem in Kenya because of KPLC and KPLC President Uhuru. We want to take this opportunity to thank President Uhuru to add to the list of terrorism those who go and break these signposts. PLO, this television is a community television. I don't know whether in Nigeria people steal poles of electricity, if it is there at all. But in Kenya, people steal all the metals that are transmitting power. So President Uhuru Kenyatta today, kudos. You did very well to add on the list an economic. In the morning, I wrote very early at 5 a.m. I said economic crime must be added as a terrorist crime so that people, if you remember, the roads had signposts. But if you are driving to Kisumu now, you have to use your own imagination where there is a corner and no corner. So, and you find people using the charcoal stove with a name Nakuru halfway. You know, they have cut it. So, Professor, the Africa that you are talking about, if we are not sinking, you tell me. If you were not sinking, surely, we are sinking, all of us. Most of the countries in Africa. Look at the type of vandalism that is taking place. Look at the type of killings. So the point here is AU has lost direction. And in this AU, millions and millions of people who are hearing us tonight must understand that the AU must be called to order. Either we make a new organization, rename it, because something, if it stays, it becomes stale. A name African Union has become stale. It has become African DC Union. Therefore, Professor, for me, my call is Buhari should not come to Addis Ababa. Buhari should come to Addis Ababa with a program to be able to bring Nigerians, to bring Biafrans, to bring all the tribes all the people and give Biafrans a referendum. Less than that,
David,
yes.
David, my own view is that I can never give up on Africa.
I have not given up.
I know you can never give up on Africa, because you and me as students of history, we can look at all the regions and we know that countries and continents pass through difficulties. The Europe that you talk about is the only continent to have gone through 2 wars, 1914, 1918, 1939, 1945. And after that, you know, there was the Spanish Civil War. You know what happened in Europe. You know the Portuguese conflicts up to 1975. You know the terrorism that happened in Italy. You know the Red Brigade in West Germany. All these tell you that countries go through trials and tribulations. You know in Asia how the Koreans fought the wars in 1953. You know in India, the war between India and Pakistan, and the war between Pakistan and Bangladesh. And my view is that Africa is going through a very difficult phase. And this phase can be positively defining or negatively defining. And I'm one who agrees with you. You posed the question, where did we get it wrong? We got it wrong in 1963. In 1963, Kwame Nkrumah was clear in telling the people, let us unite now. Let us not leave Addis Ababa without a United States of Africa. Let us not leave Addis Ababa without one army. Let us not leave Addis Ababa without one currency. Let us not leave Addis Ababa without a borderless Africa. Let us not leave Addis Ababa without recognizing that unity is our strength. But the people disagreed with Nkrumah, the majority of the leaders. And as you know, it is the Monrovia group that won. And ultimately, we formed a very watered down organization, the Organization of African Unity. When later, through the initiative of Muammar al-Gaddafi and of course Thabo Mbeki, we then transitioned to the African Union. We thought that the African Union was going to be different, but it has proved not to be different. So my own view is, what we must recognize is that we have existential threat to the African unity. And my view is that self-determination does not undermine this unity. There is this belief by people that when the people of Ambazonia say we want our rights, that when the Oduduwa and the Igbo say we want our rights, they are trying to dismember Africa, and that is antithetical to the African Union. That is not so. And I'm one who holds the view that African Union, if it has bold leadership, and I'm suggesting that it does not, if it had bold leadership, then it could midwife a process where all these conflicts that are raging in Africa could be on the table, and solutions would then be sought in a manner that would de-emphasize the inherited boundaries and allow for people to express themselves. And then we would have a system that accommodates and promotes diversity, but also encourages unity within that diversity. That is possible. We have seen it in the little country called Switzerland. Although it is a Caucasian country, there is no reason why we cannot borrow from it and use it to good effect. I can never lose hope on Mother Continent.
Yes, Wesonga.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga David. And of course, the discussion has culminated into having the AU to be an arbitrator in this particular matter. But you understand that this is an issue that has been running for quite some years now. And even when we had a show yesterday with people from Nigeria reporting about the ongoing case against Nnamdi Kanu, they say that actually they have been holding protests for quite a longer time, in that the leaders have advised them not now to come on the streets, but just sit at home and protest. So do we have a possibility that AU, being a toothless dog it is going to have any kind of maybe implications, or maybe have some powers to be able to compel President Muhammadu Buhari and his leadership to be able to give the people of Biafra a referendum and be able to solve this particular mali that has been running for quite a long time?
First of all,
comes in. David, before you come in, I just want to say one thing that underscores how weak the AU is. We know that there is a crisis in Sudan, and that the people have been on the street, in the streets of Khartoum. Instead of the AU taking the leadership, it is the Americans and the UN who have sent special envoys. And Faki Mahamat is across the border in Addis Ababa and is as silent as the grave. That is how weak the AU is. And it is, as I remember these famous words of Yasser Arafat, or not Yasser Arafat, I think it was Golda Meir in Israel, that the PLO never loses an opportunity to lose an opportunity. And I think that that is the problem of the AU, that the AU never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And that is not meant to be a credit. It is meant to demonstrate how weak, how lethargic, how disinterested it is.
First of all, thank you very much, PLO. I want to be candid. I know you are one of the few liked people on the continent of Africa for the good words that you at times give. You leave something behind. For me, PLO, if the AU does not want me to come to their summit, so be it. It's rubbish. It doesn't help me. It doesn't put food on my table. There is no AU here. We need to change the name to African Disunity, not African Unit or African Union. There is no union here. What we have in Addis Ababa is a division of countries, Anglo-speaking countries and Franco-speaking countries. The Francophone team up with ECOWAS to bulldoze every vote that English countries bring up. You saw it on the selection of Amina Mohammed of Kenya versus Mahamat Faki. The entire French-speaking countries and West Africa went in bed together and started voting Mr. Mahamat Faki. They left one single soul called Kagame and Museveni, plus some few countries, Arab countries that supported Amina Mohammed. PLO, the rest, and I want to be very frank, I found the late friend of ours, the one you know who is gone, we can't talk about him. But what he did not vote for, he did not vote for Kenya, he did not vote for Amina Mohammed. Because I was listening to what they were talking in the toilet. And when they saw me, they changed the subject. But let me tell you, you are talking of AU. AU is not there. AU is a rented item. That Africans here, that Africans who are here on the platform, and the millions of you who are hearing us, we are the only people left talking for Africa. PLO and Matsanga and another lady from Zimbabwe. We want more of the people coming up to talk for Africa. We are the only people thinking of this great continent. The great continent that has minerals, that we can, if we united, if you had a unit of purpose, if we had people like Uhuru Kenyatta, Yoweri Museveni, who is a Pan-African, he might have a deficit of democracy in his own country, in Uganda, but he is a Pan-African. I give a credit where it is due. You can't discuss bad things about Africa in the presence of Museveni. He will tell you the meeting is over, go out. We have to talk the truth. He can have the difficulty, the deficit of democracy. After all, Uganda is not even 60 years old in democracy. So it will only be 60 years this year. So that's okay. But in African affairs, Kagame, Museveni, Uhuru Kenyatta, Emerson Mnangagwa, these are the men now left. Nana Addo, these are the men left on the continent of Africa. We don't have any other person. Show me one president on the African continent who can stand up and talk like Mugabe. All of them go under the blanket. When the Europeans come, we are going to give you sanctions. They say, no, I will miss buying my perfume. So we have a great problem. We have a great problem. Look at Cameroon. We are having a football match hosted by Total Oil that has killed people, millions and millions in Biafra. And Cameroon today is very happy, proud that they are hosting AFCON. Rubbish. In fact, because of that, I damaged my TV. Until the AFCON is over, it's when I will come back to see the TV PLO. I don't want to switch on and find some African playing with Total Oil tag. Look, this is a company that went to Nigeria and killed Nigeria, killed Biafra, stuck and destroyed Biafra. This is a company that has killed Ambazonians. Ambazonians are dying today. This is a company that has killed Libya. This is a company that has killed Somalia. This is a company that has killed Mozambique. Total Oil is a company that is killing DRC Congo. This is a company that is killing Angola. Total Oil. This is a company that will kill Kenya and Uganda, because Kenya and Uganda have discovered oil. Total Oil is in South Sudan. It's a company that has destroyed South Sudan. I was shocked when Total Oil packed their goods, ladies and gentlemen, and they left the capital city of Juba, of South Sudan. And they said, because we came for oil and we have not found any lucrative agreements, we have gone to Kenya. Hallelujah. This is the Africa we have, because AU is rented. This is the Africa that we have, because AU has been rented to the French. The French pay us rent for secrets that are collected from African presidents. When African presidents go to the AU headquarters, Alcatel telephones are busy tapping their telephones to understand what they have discussed. This is the African Union we have. Until, for me, there are only 2 years left for Dr. Muhammad Faki to leave. And I said only 2 years. When Dr. Muhammad Faki leaves African Union, I will fly to Addis Ababa. Dr. Ahmed will not refuse me, because Ahmed is a very young man. He can't manage all the men with seasoned political contacts worldwide. Because if he does that, he might end up himself jailed. He must play very good. He could be jailed when you are flying around Europe. One can fly in any country in Europe and seize your plane. Time has come for us to seize some of these African dictators when they are in the sky. when they arrive in certain countries. Because the world is changing, PLO. The world is changing to a democratic center of constitutionalism. Hallelujah. It is changing today. And the Biafrans must be given their right to choose where they want to belong. The marriage is no more. There is no marriage between Nigeria and Biafra. The wife or the husband has been beating. Either the wife is beating. In this case, the Fulani administration of a chief justice that does not have certificates. He's using Sharia law. He's beating the Igbo and the Biafrans. Therefore, he must leave. They must be given the opportunity to choose where to belong. It's a common law in international relations that being a person who wants where to belong, a referendum is obvious, is normal, that a referendum is necessary. You can decide to disappear and become your own. We are not calling upon Africa to disintegrate, but we are simply saying, PLO, that Africa, which has got a problem, a wounded Africa, a bleeding Nigeria, a bleeding Biafra, which is sinking in Atlantic Ocean, can never be part and parcel of a united Africa.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you very much. As I make my own view is that the problem is now understood. And we know that we, as I've said, almost ad nauseum, are the co-authors of our misfortune. A little earlier, you cited Chinua Achebe. He said the white man is very clever. He came quietly and peaceably with his religion. We were amused at his foolishness and allowed him to stay. Now he has won our brothers and sisters, and our clan can no longer act like one. He has put a knife on the things that held us together, and we have fallen apart. There is a sense in which that statement taken out of Chinua Achebe's "things fall apart" still defines how we operate as Africa. Even our institutions are infiltrated. And you've talked about the infiltration of the African Union. Recently, you see what the Malians have said. They said that ECOWAS has been infiltrated by the French. And it is only through unity and a coordinated approach that we can create a bulwark. And the question that I'm asking is still on the table. Knowing as we do that the institutions that pretend to take care of our affairs are weak, what is it, therefore, that we can do to ensure that we do not fail nevertheless? Do we then get into these institutions and put in position men and women who are convicted? Do we get into these institutions or create new institutions? These are the questions that we ought to have on the table. And we have seen that African peoples are beginning to rise. What was the demonstrations that took place in Bamako in Mali were quite clear and sent a clear message to the world that we are going to take charge and we are not going to be dictated to. What has happened and continues to happen in Khartoum and on Omdurman is the same. In other words, I'm beginning to see a groundswell of discontent. How do we canalize that in a manner that is going to inform the discourse? And I believe that forums such as this, and men and women such as yourself and others who are on this forum and outside of this forum, the time is now for us to coordinate our activities. The time is now for us to wed our words with our deeds. The time is now for us to engage in a meaningful manner so that we can count ourselves as having contributed to some positive movement. It's Martin Luther King Jr. who said, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, but keep on moving. And this is the position that we are taking, that we must continue to be in forward motion in a constructive manner, knowing as we do that our enemies are from within and from without.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga David. And of course, we have been able, you have been able to do quite an intense analysis and just a prescription of what a Nigerian needs to be able to move forward and what kind of assistance that could actually come from AU and other stakeholders who are interested in seeing that Nigeria actually takes progress. But I believe also these lies with the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, because at the end of the day, it is their goodwill that will ensure that peace is brokered between the federal state of Nigeria and the indigenous people of Biafra. But as it is right now, I don't see that kind of willingness. Even ECOWAS itself has not been able to be successful in these kind of talks. And like PLO says, Nigeria is a giant in West Africa, owing to the fact to its biggest population. Today, when you travel across the world, the best brains, the best intellectuals are actually people who have come out of Nigeria and are out there making the world run. So to me, I believe if the government of Nigeria is not willing to be able to come on the table, then we still have a long way also to go in ending this particular crisis that has been ongoing for so many years. Just the same way we are having such kind of leadership wrangles in Somalia. You realize that the government of President Mohamed Farmajo has not been quite willing to give talks a goodwill, to be able to broker a deal and be able to sit on the table with the Prime Minister Hussein Robo. And that has actually what has been bringing a lot of trouble. You go to Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is at loggerheads with the people of Tigray, and that has been causing a lot of trouble in Ethiopia. So to me, I believe also these leaders who are at the helm of power should also show an effort and a goodwill to support the efforts by other stakeholders to bring peace and be able to end such kind of crises like the one we have in Biafra. I submit, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much, Professor.
I just want to say something. Let us not misapply the word leaders in reference to some of these individuals we have in Africa. Many of these individuals are not leaders. They just happen to occupy political office by dint of elections. And therefore, I want us going forward, particularly when we talk about a number of African leaders, that we avoid using, a number of African politicians, we avoid using the word leaders, so that it doesn't get into their head that they are leaders in the classical sense of the word. And I think that to me is very important. And I've said at a different forum that many of these individuals are actually misleaders rather than leaders.
First of all, thank you very much. I want to finally thank the judge in a court, in a high court in Nigeria, who ruled in favor of Nnamdi Kanu about the compensation of 1 billion naira for the damage done by the state. I hope and I believe that Nnamdi Kanu needs a free, fair trial that will lead him and that will expose the type of falsehood that has been labeled against him. One judge ruled very nicely, Professor, yesterday, awarded Nnamdi Kanu.
Yeah, I'm aware of that ruling, which I think is a very sound jurisprudence.
Yes, in the right direction. And I hope judges in the court, those who are remaining, who stand by Nigeria, who went to Ibadan University, Kanu University. I grew up when I wanted to go to Ibadan University. And I don't know how I missed, but Prof, I wanted to fly and be educated in Ibadan University. Because when in 1971, when I was 71, 72, 73, when I was doing O-levels in 74. The books that I read came from Nigeria. And they told me how this professor, my good friend, Chinawa Achebe, and others went to Ibadan. So I was very excited that when I got to A-levels, I must look for a scholarship and go to Ibadan University. So when we look at all this, the life, the good judges that we have that are remaining in Nigerian court, let them look at this case of this young man, a young man who was simply saying, hello, this is what the world is. Let's not suffocate democracy. I know democracy in Africa has not reached a level of democracy. And Professor, with due respect, for me, I don't think there is any country in Africa which has reached a level of calling Plato Republic, or calling Socrates, or picking a telephone call to call Aristotle. That Aristotle in the grave in Greece stand up and see whether this country has got some semblance of democracy. We are still very far. And African politics, let's be honest, there is no election in Africa that does not end up in being slapped. Someone somewhere must be slapped. But I want to tell you that elections in Britain end up without even some single person having malaria. But in Africa, it is not the malaria that kills us, it's the elections that kill us. In Africa, when it comes to election year, we always try to pack our things and try to prolong our holidays wherever you go, and come back when elections are over. That is the tragedy of our continent. I want to bring back, professors, we wind up. We shall not leave the Kenyan affairs. One part of the Kenyan affairs. And for people who are listening to us, every Thursday, this is the forum. There is a forum, fire facing political fire on this platform. Every Thursday, your country, if you have anything you want to tell us, this platform is always here. Every Thursday from 7 to 9. Professor, the court today was singing a lot of your name. Your students were doing very well today. But for me, there is one man who impressed me in the Supreme Court today. He's an activist like me. And that is why I have been defeating ICC. I felt like going into the court to tell this man, brother, thank you. He came up, he did a good analysis, although on the wrong side. He's called Orocha. I think he's one of your colleagues or whatever. He did summarize this case of Kenya, of BBI. We have been talking about Nigeria, that people want to go away. While in Kenya, the government, the president, and other people want the country to unite. Professor, your comments, a bit of your comments, whatever, whether positive or negative about the case, since now it is over, we can comment freely, and also pros and cons. I know your sentiments are as sharp as the tongue of a snake.
No, my sentiments, of course, the judges will pronounce themselves on the matter. They have said that they are going to rule on notice. But there is a statement that was made by John Haminwa in that case, and this is what John said. Whenever you have a poor politician who runs short of ideas, the immediate thing he will tell you is that let us amend the Constitution. And that is precisely what happened with the first Constitution. It was amended so many times and it ceased to be a constitution. It was not better than a toilet paper at all. And in my view, without offending the rules of sub judice, The BBI is an attempt by a number of politicians in this country to seize power by amending the constitution. And I pray and hope that the Supreme Court will find, as the High Court has found, as the Court of Appeal has found, that this kind of misconduct, this kind of stratagem by politicians with unbridled ambition who do not love their countries cannot be given pride or place in Kenya and indeed in Africa. I look forward to the Supreme Court pronouncing itself clearly. And I believe that Africa has a problem, and on this I agree with you, that the problem in Africa is that we are mimicking systems that we inherited from our colonizers. And as long as we mimic these systems, as John Henry Clark said, Africa is not going to succeed. You can see, I was today in a debate with a friend of mine, and we discovered that one of the possible presidential candidates in Kenya in the last 20 years has belonged to at least 12 political parties or formations. When you have such a person, how do you describe him? He's consistently inconsistent, and his only claim to fame is that I must be the president of the Republic of Kenya. And it's our duty to reject such individuals because they use their ambition in a manner that can harm the nation. You and me were here in the year 2007, 2008, when political ambition nearly plunged the country into civil war. And once again, I can hear the drums of war being beaten when you hear politicians wanting to get into the political arena, and none of them believes that they can lose the elections. It is a tragedy of gigantic proportion, and we've got to tell these individuals that they do not own Kenya and they cannot play what I call Russian roulette with the Kenyan peoples.
Thank you very much, Prof. There is something that I want, and don't go away, just 1 minute or two. So there is Wesonga that the viewers will agree with me. I asked today during the time, there is that air of uncertainty in this republic. The air of uncertainty, where is it coming from? I see, I am not Mungu wa Kibiro, the prophet, or I am not, but I'm just a giraffe. A giraffe sees very far. In political science, the signs of a fragmentation of situation can be seen from what the lawyers today and yesterday and the other day talked in court. You can feel that there is nobody in that court. And a professor, you are a teacher of constitutionalism and the law. I'm a teacher of political science and international relations. As a political scientist, I found something very strange. That all the Kenyans who were speaking in that court, including the judges, none of them mentioned the word unity of purpose. Nobody. I don't know whether Wesonga would agree with me. There is nothing. You see, they went before the judges, even telling the world that we don't care. One of the submissions that made me even more scared is when someone wants the court to nullify the IEBC because it did not have quorum. When the same judges seated there, the election of JSC, the election of judges of appeal was done by the IEBC. So for me as a layman and a Gentile preaching to the Jews, as professor, I don't know, these days I'm becoming a bishop. One of these days, don't be shocked that I'm in a church preaching, because it looks like I am about to. A Gentile, Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 3, when he talked, if you read it, you will find that the mess that I saw in the court today just led me to one conclusion. We are in a very delicate situation.
I'm in a Zoom meeting. Yeah.
In a very dangerous situation at the moment. It does.
Simple. You know, David, I was involved in the process of constitution making, and one of the things that we argued, including the people who are behind the BBI, who are then in support of this constitution, the argument that they used to bring forth is that we destroyed the independence constitution for political expediency and for short-term political gains. Those same individuals are the very same who are now in the forefront of wanting to have the constitution amendment for political expediency and for short-term gains. And that is the tragedy. And it's the people who are rising up and saying, this is the same path that we followed in 1963, 1964. And quite a number of issues were raised. But I would want to hear how the court pronounces itself on these issues, because we cannot, in the nature of things, have an important document as a constitution, which is less than 10, which is slightly over 10 years ago, 10 years old, being amended simply because a group of politicians think that if we amend the constitution, then it would clear our path to gain political power. Such politician, and one of the judges asked an important question. If you believed that the president had the power to initiate a popular movement, why did he stop midstream? Why did he stop saying that I'm the one who was promoting and brought in other promoters? And that is a legitimate question. So the reason why people are anxious is because people are seeing a crop of politicians in this country who have been in this country and in the political arena since the 1980s, who do not want to leave the political arena. They are selfish, they are short-sighted, and they are being called to order. The High Court has called them to order, the Court of Appeal has called them to order, and I believe this matter will be put to bed when the Supreme Court calls them to order, so that we can do other things that are more urgent. I would have thought that in this time when COVID is ravaging, when people have lost jobs, when people have lost many things, people would be focusing on the economy. But what do we see? BBI, Amendment of Political Parties Act, which are all designed to achieve one thing, to create a legal environment where political coalitions can be put together so that people can either retain power or gain power. That cannot be fair to a country, however one wants to be charitable to these individuals.
Thank you very much, Professor PLO Lumumba. Thank you, millions and millions and millions. Honestly, Professor, today it has been a long journey, the best show that we have had, over 1,000 people per second. And this is good. It is, we need them. We need the platform. We need to make noise for, not noise, but wisdom, deliver wisdom. Let's talk so that Africa can come to a good Africa. Wesonga, I give you a chance to just say good words only today, as Professor has summarized it. President Uhuru Kenyatta has just made the member of parliament for Kirinyaga women rep a few minutes ago. Hey, in a place called, I think somewhere in Sagana. So there are so many things happening, and the situation, the climate is changing, Prof, as you say. There's one thing that worries me, that on 15th of February, Kenya will change in so many directions, because we are going to go for a trial. of one of Kenyans who actually, Article 70 is very difficult. You can't defeat the court on Article 70. It is only Dr. Matsanga who defeated the court on Article 70 when I was accused, and they couldn't move further because I had evidence enough to bring the court down. But Article 70 is very difficult for someone to win. So we watch, we keep an eye on it with Songa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga David. And of course, I'd really like to thank Professor PLO Lumumba and yourself for being the voices of Pan-Africanism in this era where the Western money and the civil society money has found its way into Africa, in that the African people are no longer.
By the way, when you talk about civil money, civil society money, I'm told the earthquake on Sunday is civil society money. I didn't know the earthquake was part of the civil society ring.
Yeah, very, very, very intriguing.
Professor, have you heard the latest that the civil society entered the Mudavadi and an earthquake?
I would prefer to listen to Mudavadi when he speaks, because I do not want to preempt him. So we may have something to say after he has spoken. And
yeah, no, I was only not saying you should speak, but I was telling you.
Yeah.
The civil society seemed to have finally found a candidate.
But in any event, if I was asked to choose between Mudavadi and Ruto and Raila, I would choose Mudavadi. Let me just be honest. I think I can give the benefit of doubt.
Are you one of the delegates?
I'm not the delegate, but we have seen Raila, I've seen Ruto, and if I was to be given a choice, I would myself choose Mudavadi if the all three were the only ones on the table.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, let's wait for the earthquake to
Yes.
into a tsunami. Thank you. We're Songa, finish it up, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga. So you realize that Africa is actually getting depleted of people who can be able to stand on the highest rostrum and be able to talk about Pan-Africanism. And you guys have been very categorical, always raising issues that are very, very pertinent to the redemption and the growth of the African continent. So all said and done on this particular topic on Nigeria, I would really like to take this opportunity to let the people of Biafra know that they really have our support, especially here in Kenya, on whatever is happening in their land. And of course, we are amongst the people who are pushing for the referendum to be slated in Nigeria, so that these people can have their voice heard. And it's not only Nigeria, the people of West Africa, when you expand a little bit further, when you go to Cameroon, the people of Ambazonia have been facing the same fate as the people of Biafra. So to me, I believe these have been a very, very candid discussion, and you've done a very, very good evaluation and good perspective of how this problem could be solved. And it's upon the leadership of Africa through the African Union. It is upon the leadership of Nigeria through the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, and also in partnering with the leadership of Biafra and all the other groups which are involved in these particular discussions, to go on the table and be able to implement whatever ideas that you've given into the crisis on this particular platform. So for me, Dr. Matsanga, I believe if every African will come on board and be able to talk quite candidly and objectively about the problems that we are facing, then we will not be having the crisis that we have across the continent. The problem with Africa is that we tend more to sit on the problems that we have and pretend that everything is okay. We even pretend that everything is okay with our democracy when we have leaders being elected with 98% of the vote, which is cast in countries like Cameroon. That is very, very quite intriguing, Dr. Matsanga. So to me, I believe we need truism in Africa. We need to be able to come out boldly and discuss the issues that we do face and be able to bring out the solutions that can be able to be implemented and make sure that at the end of the day, we talk and we do not let issues boil and escalate all the way to a scenario where we will be able to take arms and fight each other like it happens in Ethiopia and Somalia and many, many more other African countries that are facing conflict. So mine is just to thank you and thank Professor for these kind of ideas. And I believe those who are quite mandated with ensuring that these crises is solved will be able to pick up the points and be able to make something useful out of it. I submit, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much, viewers. Thank you very much, all of you, Professor PLO Lumumba. Thank you very much, the broadcasting studios, our engineers on hand, editors, all those who have been with us. Thank you very much, Daniel, for sparing your time, 2 hours. Thank you very much. God bless you and God bless Africa. This was a fantastic show. And thank you very much for the fight for Africa. God bless. This station is for Africa, with Africa, by Africa. Ciao.